And we are live. Hey everyone, welcome to the second AT&T Inspired Mobility Hangout. My name is Jason Caston. I'm the creator and author of the iChurch Method. As always, we have an exciting discussion planned. Today we'll be talking about social media for social good. But before we get into that, let's start with a few introductions. For those new to Inspired Mobility, it's a national conversation that explores the many ways people use tools like phones, tablets, all things mobile, and internet technology to uplift, inspire, and connect with their faith. During the first Hangout, we spoke with best-selling author and life coach Valerie Burton about faith and technology. She blessed us with so much knowledge and even gave us some much-needed tips on creating balance in today's digital world. Today, I'm joined by two exceptionally inspirational brothers, James Andrews and Devon Franklin. Let me tell you about these brothers real quick. James Andrews is a transmedia storyteller and founder of True Story Agency. In 2010, James created the first social media Guinness World Record with hashtag Beat Cancer, which raised $70,000 for cancer in 24 hours using social media. His agency has worked on digital and social strategies for Nike, the Grammy Awards, Beats by Dre, and many more. James, introduce yourself to the audience. Say hello.
Hello, audience. Good to be here.
All right. Last but certainly not least, Devon Franklin serves as president, CEO of Franklin Entertainment, a new first-look production company with Sony Pictures Entertainment. As the former senior vice president of Columbia's TriStar Pictures, Devon worked on a number of studio's most successful films, including The Karate Kid, The Pursuit of Happiness, and Jumpin' the Broom. Ebony Magazine has named him one of the top 100 influential African Americans in America, and Belief Net named him one of the most influential Christians under 40. He is also a published author. His book, Produced by Faith, is one of the best ones out there. Please help me welcome Devon Franklin. Devon, please say hello to our audience.
Hey, how you doing? Good morning. Good to see you.
All right, all right. I also want to welcome all of our viewers today, including the Inspired Mobility bloggers, Brother Tech, Tech Guy Smart Buy, Brown Girl Gumbo, Soca Mom, and Nikki in the City, and Black Girl Nerds. We appreciate you all and all your help. So, with that being stated, let's get started. You can submit your Inspired Mobility questions via the Google Hangout comment section or on Twitter using the hashtag Inspired Mobility. To start us off, we're going to look at what does it mean to be an activist in this age of ever-evolving social media. So James, start us off with what do you think it means to be an activist in this ever-evolving age of social media?
Well, I think you'd have to start with what does it mean to be an activist. I think, it means standing for something. I think it's too easy these days in the era of social media to be a slacktivist. But I think to be an activist is nothing's changed with being an activist. It's believing in something, believing in a cause, believing in a mission, believing in having faith in something, and really standing for something. And I think all social media has done has created a platform to give a storytelling channel for those of us that believe in something. Right, so I spent a lot of time in the Middle East with those who were involved in Arab Spring, and they at their core are activists. Right, they were fighting for democracy, fighting for their rights in the Middle East, and yet the tools allow them today in 2014, 2015, 2016, allow them to tell stories about what they're going through. So I think that question is best asked about what does it mean to be an actual activist, and what does activism look like, and what are the opportunities we have to be activists?
True indeed, true indeed. Devon, what do you think about that? You want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it's important. I love how James identified, well, let's identify what an activist is first. I do think that, in the world of social media and, how aggressive people can be, not only with their comments, but with their point of view, I think that it has opened up a new avenue for activism. And when people galvanize around an issue, it's very easy to drive attention to that issue, awareness around that issue very quickly. So even with people not necessarily always getting out into the streets, definitely taking to their mobile devices, their computers, their laptops, their smartphones, all of those things, it helps bring awareness to the issues that really do matter.
Yeah, very true indeed. So then, In your opinion, Devon, what have been some of the most impactful social media movements that you've seen?
Certainly Black Lives Matter, without question. It's. I think history will look back and say, wow, look at the impact of technology as it relates to social activism, as it relates to this particular movement. If you didn't have the internet, would Black Lives Matter have been able to be as successful as it has been? So that is the one that really comes to mind as one that has been working. There's, when you look at the marches and you look at how many people have been able to get out and have become aware of what's going on in the communities, it's because really of this, and I'm really, really proud of what they've done by making sure that regardless to where you are, just by using that hashtag, you're able to connect with what's going on in the country.
Exactly, James. With in addition to what do you think some of the most impactful social media movements? Can you elaborate as well why you thought they were so successful?
Well, yeah, I guess I'll chime in on the movement I think that has been most impactful is the election of Barack Obama. If you think of social media, it's really the entire internet at this point. And I would say that, Barack Obama's, election and campaigns were built on the framework of digital and social. And they were successful because I think if you look at all of those movements, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's Barack Obama, they start with a core group of individuals, right? And those individuals have communities. The important thing to note about social media is you're reaching audiences who have audiences. And so what's incredible about these movements is they start with a small core group of people who maybe don't have tons of followers. I think sometimes for those of you that are listening, you think it's about individuals with the most followers. Well, it's actually individuals with the most respect and the most engaged followers are critical to any movement. So, when I look at Ferguson, when I look at Black Lives Matter, when I look at Barack Obama, it's about finding those nodes of influence, finding those individuals who have spheres of influence, and then 10xing them, 20xing them, so they actually become super loud. And so I think oftentimes organizations think they can fabricate a movement or create a movement, or the worst of my things that comes in my ear, which is, can you make this thing go viral? When people say that to me, it makes me throw up in my mouth sometimes. But I literally think that we have to analyze these movements from the standpoint of there are people who are really passionate about what they want to say, and they were gathered in one place, and that steam just steamrolled. And so I think if you look at President Obama, President Obama was the beneficiary of a rolling thunder of a collective group of people who galvanized around what he had to say, and that's critical to a movement.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the key things that Twitter, for example, or even Instagram at some levels, is the fact that you can start a movement. You can start one-to-one and talking to people, especially on like Twitter, one-to-one and have a conversation, or you can talk one-to-many. And so that type of platform gives a voice that can be as loud or as quiet as you want it to be, especially when you're looking at different points of the movement and how you want to impact people. So just the fact that we have that opportunity is something that's really good. But one of the things that fuels those one-to-one and one-to-many is hashtags. So let's talk about hashtags real quick, because social media movements and hashtags create a lot of chatter and engagement. So in your opinion, and we can go with you, James, first, and then we'll come to you, Devon, but how important have hashtags been as far as driving the social media movements that we've seen?
Well, I think hashtags, just to get nerdy for a little bit, it's a taxonomy. It's a way to put the conversation in a filing cabinet, right? It's a way to broadcast the movement under a name. Hashtags only mean as much as people are using them, right? So I think the world has gone a little hashtag crazy, but I love the fact that the way that the social media structure is such that hashtags can be a movement, hashtags can underscore a point, but it's really important to note that you and I right now, you, Devon, myself, could easily come up with a hashtag, but it only means as much as people are going to use the hashtag. So I think from a functional standpoint, hashtags have been a great tactical usage of the internet, which is really what it is. It's an internet usage thing. And Twitter, of course, was the first to sort of introduce hashtags into the world. Now we see it in advertising. We're seeing brands jump all over it. But again, it's almost like the question that you asked me about activism and what I think about activists in social media. Activists are only activists if they have something to stand behind, and hashtags are really only something if they actually mean something and people rally behind them.
Agreed, agreed. Devon, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think James is right. I mean, there is a bit of hashtag fever, so to speak. I was driving down the highway last night to go visit a friend and her daughter, and on the billboard they were advertising Not Scary Farm, which is a Halloween thing out here in LA. Anyway, it had a picture, it had the name Not Scary Farm, and then the hashtag Scare Fun or whatever it was, and that was it. And that just stuck out to me. That wow, it's like just because you put the hashtag up there, I mean, what? Okay, so people are hashtagging. What does that mean? So I do think that when they actually have substance, when they're galvanizing people. I mean, it's funny. This morning I'm on the Twitter, and there's all this hashtag Anthony Hamilton because he did this soulful rendition of Whip the Nay Nay song, right? And it's hilarious. And people can't stop talking about it because it's funny, right? But so you can do it in a way that is just, culturally interesting, and then you can also do it for activism. So when it's done right, clearly it makes an impact. But as James has said, I live in the world of people marketing and movies, and people want to hashtag everything. Well, people don't want to see the movie. It don't matter how many hashtags you have. It's really about what it's about, and can you drive people toward the conversation about something they actually want to talk about.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, and I agree with you both. Hashtags, and I'm looking at it from, since I come from the technical perspective, jumping in and out of the how the platforms work. Hashtags allow us to jump in and out of a conversation. So one thing I've noticed is if a hashtag is about something I like, I can find it, see what everybody else is talking about it, jump in, talk about it, and then jump back out. But also, like you said, it could be a hashtag that has no meaning. So am I really wasting my time jumping in, talking about said a relevant, not very farm, scary farm, or whatever it is, if nobody else is talking about it.
Right.
But also, when we look at some of the activism, social activist hashtags like, say, a Trayvon Martin or something, when I first found out about it was through, seeing the hashtag start to trend. And so then I was able to jump in.
It's our work is in TV, so we launched Blackish, and one of the things that we had to do for Blackish is start a conversation before the show launched about why executive producers wanted to start this show and why they named the show Blackish. And so I can say that I would credit TV and the TV industry really giving us that sort of first initial place where we thought about using hashtags and jumping in and out of conversations in what I call companion viewing. So that idea of like, I'm in a conversation, I'm out of a conversation, really started with, Scandal and all those shows. And I think that now we're seeing, to your point, I can jump into a conversation about something really deep. I can jump into a conversation around Sunday. I can jump to, and so what's happening is the world is almost like becoming programmed. It's like appointment TV, which is what TV is sort of born on, is now becoming appointment Twitter, right? So it's asynchronous and synchronous. I can jump into the conversation, and the conversation's happening while I'm sleeping, and I can lend my opinion to that conversation, and then I can jump out of it. And so yeah, from a functional standpoint, I think TV has really gave Twitter and hashtags this sort of companion role together, and this utilitarian purpose that we hadn't seen yet.
Yeah, true indeed, true indeed. And I like when you use the TV example, I think about the second screen experience. So while I'm watching TV and then I'm having my second screen experience with my hashtags. But
that's right.
Speaking of the hashtags, and I'm going to jump over to you, Devon, one of the things I noticed with the hashtags, and before I get to that, let me give you guys a reminder, use our hashtag, Inspired Mobility, on Twitter and submit your questions so that we can get to those at the end of our discussion. Or you can submit your questions in the comments on this Google Hangout page as well. Back to you, Devon, and we're talking about the hashtags. One of the things I saw with the hashtags, we were talking about how Black Twitter uses the hashtags, and then Black Twitter having a high resonance with African Americans, and even so much so that Nielsen's recent report was talking about it. And I believe the LA Times hired a reporter to even focus on Black Twitter, and that how things are going with that. But why do you think Black Twitter kind of took off as its own thing?
That's a really good question, and I've obviously been aware of what's been going on and how influential Black Twitter has become. Why? I think because whenever you have an underserved or underrepresented voice, and that voice is going to find a way to be heard. And I think that Twitter, has finally, to a degree, leveled the cultural playing field, where no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, you can have a voice. And I think that what it has done is it's given, Black Twitter, a cultural perspective of being able to comment on everything from, Donald Trump to Anthony Hamilton. And it's also given it, a platform for activism, and being able to, unite around issues that really matter. But I think part of the reason, just in my own, diagnosis or assessment of it, is it gives you a voice. I can go on Twitter. I don't need anybody to pay. I don't need to get airtime. I don't need to ask permission. I can just go here and express what I'm feeling. And I think that really resonates, because, especially, being a young Black man, I mean, there's been many times where I have not felt the opportunity to be able to express myself, to be able to say what I really wanted to say, whether it be because I was in a corporate room where I couldn't do that, or there just weren't the right opportunities. So when you look at, opportunity to be on Twitter and to be able to have this dialogue, I think that's one of the reasons why Black Twitter has become so strong.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. James, why don't you weigh in on that?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like I was on Twitter when it was white Twitter. So honestly, I'm probably one of the early folks on Twitter. I've been on since 2000, since literally the day it launched, and I remember when we weren't there in numbers, and we weren't, we didn't have a voice, right? We weren't active. And you could tell from the hashtags, the trending topics. I could see when the trending topics flipped. I was like, oh, my people are here. I can tell. I knew when things shifted on Twitter, right? There became day parts on Twitter where we really changed the discourse of what Twitter sounded like from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And what's most exciting about Black Twitter, I guess, as a concept, I still am trying to wrap my head around Black Twitter. It's really just we dominate a platform. And if you look at the numbers, we dominate social platforms. It's just, I think we as African Americans, we as people of color, we as multicultural folks, I'm putting us all in one bucket, have something to say. And we've not had a lot of, like Devon said, we haven't had a lot of outlets to say that. Our mainstream media outlets have not always taken the same angles that we want to take. Sometimes they've kind of created a myopic view of the Black experience. And I think what you're experiencing in Black Twitter is the Black diaspora of opinions and ideas and experiences coming through a platform that's democratic and universal. And so I think that's what Black Twitter means to me, is it's the free expression of the Black experience on a platform where we have no rules. It's not governed by Essence or Ebony or anybody. It's governed by people who have an opportunity to have a voice and to really express themselves in a way that we have not had historically.
That's right. Understood. Okay. So James, with that being stated, you've actually developed a few of these impactful social media movements, you and your organization. So can you tell us some of the tips you have for people and organizations, including maybe faith-based organizations, looking to use social media to create impact and change?
Yeah, so the tips are, first and foremost, throw out the rule books. Stop copying what you think you're supposed to be doing. Discover what I refer to as digital wanderlust. The important thing about playing with these tools is you actually have to use the tools and understand the culture behind the tools. Every tool, every platform has its own unique voice and tonality, right? And essentially what you're doing is it's much probably like Devon's world. You're actually writing a script across a platform. You're actually creating a narrative across a platform. And so my world feels as much like Aaron Spelling as it does, marketing. And you have to think about programming. You have to think about the time of day. You have to think about the context in the way that you would have to think about this in the same way if you were doing a script, if you were writing a play, or you were doing theater, right? And so what we were able to do, we set the first ever Guinness World Record. It was amazing. I didn't do it for a client. To be honest with you, I did it because I lost my own aunt to cancer. And I was struggling with people's opinions around what they thought Twitter was. And this was 2009. This was a very long time ago. So back then, people had varying degrees of opinions around what they thought we were doing in social media. And I felt like there were probably people out there that wanted to talk about cancer. And I had recently lost my aunt to cancer. And I did a lot of appearances on CNN, and I was friends with Don Lemon, and I guess I'm still friends with Don Lemon. Hi, Don. I was sitting at lunch with Don Lemon, and honestly, Don Lemon challenged me and said, I took him to lunch, and I said, hey, this is my relationship with him. I said, look, man, I need you to put me on the air. And he said, look, man, why don't you break a record? And so I really took this challenge from Don Lemon over dinner and pulled out my phone and sent a tweet. And I said, who knows somebody at Guinness World Record? I want to break a record. And within 6 minutes, someone sent me the contact information of a guy at Guinness World Records. And so over dinner, while I'm still sitting here eating my courses, I decided to create a movement. There was no client involved. There was no, this was like seize the moment, right? This was a Kairos moment, right? I had to seize this moment. Don Lemon was challenging me. He told me, put me on the air again if I broke a record, and I really cared and it was passionate about cancer. And so I sent this tweet. I found the guy at Guinness World Records, and I basically was going to a conference, and I was bringing Don Lemon as a speaker to this conference, and I knew that there was going to be a bunch of social media active people there. And I knew if I could start this movement with these small group of people who had big followings, that movement would actually probably take course. But most importantly, yeah, I wanted to do the Guinness World Record, but I wanted to prove that there were conversations around cancer. And so we basically jumped on a plane 48 hours later. I grabbed Don Lemon, and we went to Las Vegas, and we went to this conference, and I got everybody in the conference to start using one hashtag. And we used the hashtag #BeatCancer. And from there, we started at 8 a.m., and by 12 p.m., Kardashian hit it. By 1 p.m., Bieber hit it. And we basically created a conversation around cancer. Now, that's great that we created the first ever Guinness World Record. But the most important part of the narrative is the fact that, like, right now, if you search #BeatCancer, there's somebody going into a chemotherapy, into chemotherapy, or someone who's losing their aunt. And someone now has an opportunity to express an emotion around something called Beat Cancer. And that's really what I wanted to create, was a meme, right? It's what we call a meme, or a moment. And I want to create a conversation that people out there were dealing with cancer and probably needed a place to emote. So, I mean, I think if you're out there, I come from hip-hop. I started off in the record business. Everything I learn, everything I do is about marketing things from the bottom up. And that was very much a bottom-up execution. It wasn't about a ton of money. It wasn't about a ton of resources. I had an idea, I had a platform, and I had an opportunity to create a conversation. And I think for anybody listening, all of you have the same tools. I'm just a guy here in Atlanta. I put the 10,000 hours in, it makes me an expert in the tools, but I'm just someone who understands how to fashion the tools to create conversations. And I think that's what folks out there who are listening should think about. What do you want to say? What do you want to say to the world? How are you using the platforms to say those things? I remember when in church, I was one of the first people to live stream. I had early versions of Ustream on my phone, and I used to live stream my pastor, and the ushers would come and slap my hand down and say, "Put that phone down." And I was like, "But wait, we're supposed to take the ministry outside the walls, right? I don't understand why you're slapping my arm down, because I thought this message is supposed to go beyond Atlanta, Georgia." At the end of the day, think of what you're doing and think of who you are as a broadcast mechanism. Think of the opportunity as channeling that message to people around the world. And you can do that in your own individual profiles, and you can do that for your organization. But first and foremost, you have to have something to say. You have to stand for something. It's like the question you asked me about being an activist. You actually have to stand for something. And then once you stand for something, you can frame it up in these tools that are democratic, that have no rules. There are absolutely no rules with any of these tools. And you now have the opportunity to actually write the rules and to write the rules of engagement. And maybe you pepper it, right? Maybe in your church you have 20 people who you know have followings, right? It's kind of what I did with my beat cancer story. I knew that if I went to Vegas, that there were about 100 people there who all had followings around 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. I knew that once they hit it, it was going to cause an effect. But you have the same thing. You have people in your organizations that can help push the message. And everything you do is not going to create a Guinness World Record, and everything you do is not going to make the trending topic in Twitter, and you should get that out of your head. What you want to do is make sure that you permeate and press out as much as you can, and you think of yourself as a radio station, and you think of yourself as a broadcast channel, and then first and foremost, what you have to say is important enough that people would want to hear it and then potentially share it.
Whew, that's what I'm talking about there, man. Thought I was going to pass the offering plate.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that.
I mean, you dropped some knowledge there. So,
Yes.
speaking of that, I mean, Devon, I know we know that what the stuff you do as far as helping organizations and things you do on social media, what you're preaching and the variety of things you do. But what are some tips you have for organizations, including faith-based, since we're talking about inspired mobility, is from an inspirational faith-based perspective, to help people and organizations use social media, create impact and change?
Yeah, I would say, you gotta be consistent, because what happens sometimes is we become program oriented and not purpose oriented. And so, from a social media standpoint, once you begin an engagement with your audience around whatever you're doing, sometimes I see organizations or even individuals in the space, they'll get really active around an issue or a program they want people to know about, and then once the program's over, they disappear. Well, the audience is just like, as James said, I mean, the audience is very much like, a viewing audience, a television audience. It's like they know if you're real or not.
Yeah.
And if you just come on and you want to market to me, they tune out. But if you are there and you're conversing with me and you're engaging with me, and then you want to market to me, then there's usually much more of an acceptance of that versus, hey, I just want you to come to this or buy this or donate here. People don't really pay attention. They kind of tune out. And some people even resent it because it's like, oh, you only want my attention when there's something to sell or something that you want me to do is going to benefit you. So I would encourage organizations to be consistent, every day. I mean, I have a social media manager. We plan the day, we plan the week, we plan our, what are we going to say? What's the conversation like? It is different on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The different types of people that you can reach and the different types of messaging you can do. So it's really important to identify what's the overall messaging and then take that messaging and translate it into the different platforms that are available. And be creative. Really be creative. I think that people really respond to something that's different. There's so many of the same types of things on Instagram and Facebook, but so when you do something different and you find creative ways to translate your messaging around your purpose, it works. It really does work. And I do agree with James. Be adventurous. Try some things. See what works. See what doesn't. And the good news is that if something doesn't work, hey, this didn't work. Take it down. Put something else up. Keep going. And that's also what's really great is that there's a really short memory as it relates to that kind of thing. If you posted something, doesn't work out, all right, well, that didn't work. All right, let's try something else. I think that's really, really important. And I also think, it's very, very important to, be led by God and to really allow, God to guide you as it relates to this platform and what are His intentions for you to use it to get the message out, because it is a platform that we all have available to us. And some people use that platform for good, and others choose to use it for other things. And I believe that organizations out there, especially those of faith, have to have faith while using the platform and be guided every step of the way.
Absolutely. I mean, what both of you guys said, I mean, it's really is more than enough information and definitely some good teaching points. I'm gonna give some of our viewers a few key points as far as what your organization can do, or your personally, or your organization can do to kind of get started in social media. Here's some key things to think about. For a good social strategy, we can look at these 5 key areas. So one of the good one is inspiration. Inspirational content or educational content that's focused on the actual person you're trying to reach, as opposed to the marketing content as far as what can I get. But the inspirational, educational, inspire people, educate them uplift them, that just, creates a connection with them. Informational content, as far as what's going on with your organization, but make sure you are looking at to make a connection with the people you're trying to reach as far as what is beneficial to them. Communication. Keep the social and social media. I don't know how many times, whether James seen it or Devon seen it, organizations are just talking at people, but it's not a two-way conversation. This social media is a multifaceted conversation across multiple devices, across multiple platforms, and so it should be a communication type of conversation. Diversification. Don't throw all your eggs in one social media basket. So for you, some of you out there listening, Facebook is great, but there's a lot more, platforms that are out there. Instagram just hit 400 million users. Snapchat has 100 million. People still trying to figure out how to use that. Vine is 40 million. Pinterest has 75 million. Facebook, of course, with 1 billion. And Twitter, I think, is about 300 million active users. So when you're looking at all these different platforms, and as Devon said, having different conversations on these platforms, diversify the platforms you utilize. Because I don't know if any of you guys have seen, but I've seen people who had pages that had hundreds of thousands of users on Facebook get shut down. And if that was their only social media strategy, that's it. It's over. They think that social media isn't working for them. There's a lot of different ways you connect with people. And then, and again, as Devon said, consistency. Be consistent on the platforms you're using. And make sure that you continually, if you start something, a platform or you Twitter, then stay consistent on that. And if you can't stay consistent on it with the content that you're pushing out, then don't start it. So back to that real quick. So it's a quick teaching moment. We were talking about change, and so one of the things that I wanted to talk about as far as with helping people change is Devon's book. Devon has a book called Produced by Faith: Enjoy Real Success Without Losing Your True Self, which is helping people make changes in their lives. So Devon, can you talk about, one, just real quick about your book, and then also about how people have shared it and how you've seen the impact of it on social media?
Yeah, just fine. I didn't know you were going to bring it up, but I actually have a copy right here. I didn't know that you're going to bring that up. But this actually is really a change. I'm holding change in my hands, and what I mean by that is I wrote this book, while I was an executive senior vice president of production for Columbia Pictures, and that was a very risky thing to do, to be an executive, in a really good paying job. But to write a book about faith, and the goal was I wanted readers to change. I wanted people's lives to change, because I've seen so many people that have dreams and aspirations, and they literally give up who they are, their identity, their soul, their being, their essence, in exchange for what they view as success. And it never is an even exchange, because when you give up the essence of who you are, you can never really get anything back that's going to replace that. And so I wrote the book, with that goal of, hey, I really want people to know that you can be everything God called you to be. You can have faith. You can be great in your field. And you can do it because your life is produced by faith. And so for me, when I wrote the book, it was a literal change that was manifesting. Going from being an executive to now being an author was a change that has changed my life from that day to this, and all the various things that I'm able to do. And I think that, if you can't see the value of faith in my life, then you're not going to be as apt to try it. So I wanted to write Produced by Faith to draw on my experiences, to show the power of God, to show the power of hard work, to show the power of integrity, and then do that as a way to motivate and inspire the reader to begin to produce their life by faith and begin to work even harder and have a vision. And I use it as a metaphor for a movie. It's like with any script, before you get a movie at the theater, it starts as a script. The same with our life. You can't just go and say, hey, I'm ready to be produced. Well, you haven't worked on your script. You haven't worked on your integrity. You haven't worked on your heart. So I wrote the book so that you could go from development into production, and you could pick up the book and read any chapter, and it will be relevant to kind of where you are and give you tips on where you need to go. Because I see this generation, especially this millennial generation, it's like, hey, they want it, but they don't want to work for it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work. I mean, that's not going to work. Yeah, you got to want it and work for it, and still keep the vision of who you are, and also the essence of who you are along the way.
Man, that's that in itself. I mean, I've checked your book out, and I thought it was a great book. But I really like the way, again, Produced by Faith, and then with where you're at and the things I knew about you, and then watching, the success you've had, it just all went together very well. So we appreciate you for writing that book. All right, so as we look at, we're going to start going to our live questions from some of them that I do have here that for you gentlemen. First, going over to James, we have a question. What do you predict the next big social media movement will be? Or like, what does the future of social media movements look like? That was, I think that was off of the Google Hangout question.
Well, I think it's important that the next movement is us starting to look at the entire internet as social media. When we start talking about social media, we have to stop referring to it as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat. It's really the entire internet is social at this point. So the question really is about what's the future of the internet. The question really is about how are we going to be consuming the internet? What are the devices that are going to give us information? How does data change information that comes to us? I'm giving you kind of a wide lens, but the future that I see, that I get to play around with in Silicon Valley and Tel Aviv and all around the world, looks like a future of devices that are your internet, things you wear that are your internet. So all of those things are your internet, and thus all of those things are your social media. So I think it's important to note that what we know right now, this is like the first inning. This is like the very, very beginning. Where we consume art, the future of AR and VR. My son, who's a University of Miami junior, was interning for me this summer, and here I am steeped in the bowels of this incredible thing called technology, and he's a young violinist, and he was schooling me this summer on the future of like where people are making music and where people are making art and how people will be wearing devices, and concert venues will look differently because of the internet. So whenever I hear the future of social media, I have to immediately go to what is the future of the internet, because that's really what's exciting about the future of social media.
Yeah, I agree. I think the reason we can look at that and look at the future of social media, with movements, internet, and all that stuff, is we look at, all of us know young kids in our lives, 18 months, who can pick up an iPad, go through it, scroll through it, get to Netflix, get to Dora, get to Angry Birds without anybody telling them what to do. Or these toddlers, we see that parents give them their phones to occupy them, and this is the oldest technology that these youth will. This is their Betamax, 8-tracks, the stuff we think back about and laugh about. But this is old technology to them. So when they get to the Internet of Things, this immersive technology that we're getting to, social media will be such second nature that they will always be connected. The lines will be blurred between online and offline, but I think they will do it at a much better level than we do now, where there's, some people are always online. You see them at dinner, they don't look up at each other. Or some people are like, I don't like the internet, it's the worst thing ever, and they're always offline. They'll be able to merge the two.
Can I add one note to that? Can I add one note to that? Actually, the future of social media is Devon and I sitting down and having lunch. So no, but really, the reality is that the future of social media is taking these technologies, and he and I are now friends on Twitter, and he and I are friends on Instagram, but it's actually paleo social media, right? So it's how do you use these tools to build networks and real networks that help you, right? And so social media is the in-between real life engagement, right? So I see now that deals aren't being done at country clubs anymore, right? They're being done at places where people have had interactions through digital platforms, and then when they get to TED, when they get to Summit Series, when they get to Burning Man, there is a relationship that's been built and manifested, a business relationship that's happened in digital platforms, but it comes together when people are sitting face to face with each other. So I think the other part of the future of social media is, what do these tools do to create a better relationship for Devon and I? How do we actually build a better relationship because of the platforms? Not how many likes can I get on my picture, or how many more friends can I add to my Facebook page, but how deep can we go in relationship with each other, because we know that Devon's daughter had a birthday party, or he knows that I went on a trip with my wife. And how do we then have deeper relationships with each other in the offline world?
Okay, great. All right, Devon, I got this question for you before we wrap things up, and this was from Twitter, and it's an interesting question, so let me know your perspective on it. It was, what are some suggestions for local government to capture the power of social media? And this is from Anthony Ree on Twitter.
They need to, hire some young folks to help them out. I mean, I think that when you look at local government and you look at the issues specifically affecting the community, this is a hard thing to learn. Like, yeah, it's easy to get on the phone and just post some stuff, but when you're talking about a strategy to ultimately impact advocacy, you need someone to help you. So, I think local government, really should consider either having an office of social media engagement, where they actually have people that are on the payroll that do this for a living and are able to translate and communicate, the issues on these various platforms. I think it's important, because if you don't treat it seriously and you don't actually create an avenue for it, then it's going to be very hard for the people in the community that are connected socially to know what the local government is doing. So I think it's something that needs to be taken seriously, and probably would either be, creating an office or hiring an outside consultant that can actually do the posting and help create the messaging that would help, not only the community stay engaged, but also help that local government be more effective in their communication.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love the way you put that, as far as the community stay connected with the local government stay connected with the community. And again, if it's socially, and social media is 24/7, we're never more than 2 or 3 feet away from our mobile devices at any given time, then we can stay connected at all the time. And so I think that would just open up the lines of communication and would, again, provide much more trust between the community and the local government. So this was great, my friends. It was really great. Thanks, Devon and James, for making our final Inspired Mobility Hangout of the year a success. Also, thanks everyone who tuned in and submitted questions. Make sure you join us next month, November 22nd, for Social Media Sunday with the legendary Rev Run. For those of you who are new to Social Media Sunday, it's traditionally a day where we encourage people of faith to share the gospel and be the church online. This can come in the form of sharing inspirational quotes from the sermon, posting pictures of the experience, and tagging others to help them feel the same uplifting emotion that is stirred within the pews. Real quick, if you follow Devon on Instagram, Devon Franklin on Instagram, you'll see some of his motivational messages you can share with the hashtag Inspired Mobility. So just FYI, whether you attend church, live stream a Sunday service, or listen to inspirational music while getting ready for the upcoming week, here's how you can participate in the next Social Media Sunday. Join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram using the hashtag Inspired Mobility. Share an inspirational message within your network and tag members of your social network to let them know you want to reach them with an uplifting message. Until next time, remember to share your inspirational quotes, photos, and videos using the hashtag Inspired Mobility, and check out about.att.com, keyword Inspired Mobility, for more info. Again, my friends, James, Devon, thank you for tuning in and connecting with us and inspiring all of our viewers. We appreciate you, my friends.
Appreciate you too. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Devon.
Thanks, Jay. Jay and Jay.
Jay and Jay.